Hi there guys, I hope you are having a good day. Go and put the kettle on and let's talk some boxing. Now, apparently according to Eddie Hearn, Anthony Joshua has started his training camp in preparations for Tyson Fury. Now, what that does mean is that they do know when the fight will take place. A ballpark figure, because AJ is an elite athlete, so is Tyson Fury, so they need to peak at a certain point, meaning they would need to know roughly when the date is going to be, and apparently the date will now be in July. So Eddie Hearn has been going around looking for a site fee to secure this fight because obviously after they signed that agreement, they had 28 days to ensure they got that site, the date and the venue sorted. And that seems to be what Eddie Hearn is doing now. And hopefully the fight will be announced maybe next week. At least that is what Eddie Hearn is saying. He said that before, but it seems like Eddie Hearn is the one who is moving things forward with regards to the negotiations and the agreement of this fight and getting everything done. So let's hope we can get an announcement next week. This is what Eddie Hearn had to say about this situation. Really, I think end of next week it will be done. July is the date. Talks have progressed extremely well and we're closing in on securing the venue and there will be an announcement in due course. So there we go, could be announced very soon, the date and the venue for this fight. Obviously, I would imagine AJ knows roughly the date in July because obviously he will be working towards that. It is extremely exciting that we could be getting an announcement next week. Now, AJ has continued to train since the Pula fight anyway, so he will be starting training camp, but more or less ramping up his training. I hope he hasn't overdone it in those training sessions leading up to now. I wouldn't imagine that he has. I mean, we saw a picture of him in Miami, I believe, with David Beckham. Perhaps that was some kind of break from training, then he comes back and begins his training camp, which is a wise thing to do, just have a week off, then go into the training camp, because he cannot train from mid-December all the way to July. That's just crazy. He will burn out way before the fight. So it is important that the training sessions are limited leading up to the training camp, especially for someone like Anthony Joshua who does like to remain training in the gym. Now, we have seen some pictures of Tyson Fury, and he looks a lot different from what he did maybe a month ago, or a little bit more, in his picture that he took in his gym. And we've also seen him training with Joseph Parker and Andy Lee, so he is also ramping up his training in preparations for AJ. I don't know whether Sugar Hill is still with Tyson Fury. He did explain in a BT Sports interview that Sugar Hill had gone home, but he still seems to be in training camp, or training at least, with Joseph Parker and Andy Lee. Andy Lee obviously was in the corner also with Tyson Fury in his second fight with Deontay Wilder. I did look on Sugar Hill's Instagram page, and on the 11th of February, I believe, in Florida, he said, "Great training session today, turn up the heat Kronk style," with Anthony Durrell, so he has gone home. But the good thing with Tyson Fury is he is able to train with one of his trainers, Andy Lee. Maybe we could even get Tyson Fury training primarily with Andy Lee and Sugar Hill will come in later on during the training camp. That's not ideal, but we could see that. I mean, Andy Lee has the makings of a good trainer, and I do believe that he can get somewhere someday. I'm not sure if he's ready to train Tyson Fury on his own just yet, going into an undisputed fight with AJ, given the importance of that fight. No disrespect to Andy Lee, but it is a bit soon, considering his experience as a trainer. I mean, he will be working with Joseph Parker with his preparations towards the Derek Chisora fight, and that's great. That's great experience for him as a trainer, and I do believe that he can do some great things with Joseph Parker, really bring a different side out of him, and if he cannot, I don't see who can with Joe Parker. So that will definitely be a fight where we can gauge Joe Parker, and perhaps Andy Lee's abilities as a trainer. What can he bring from his fighters? Because he was working with Tyson Fury in the Deontay Wilder fight, the second one, but he wasn't working with him on his own. This time with Joe Parker, we will get to judge Andy Lee based off of his fighter's performance in the ring, because he is the one the Buck stops with when it comes down to training and adjustments in the fight as well, telling his fighter what to do. The Buck stops with him when he's in the corner with Joe Parker. It stopped with Sugar Hill when Tyson Fury was fighting Deontay Wilder the second time around. I guess it all just comes down to whether Sugar Hill will travel back to the UK or whether maybe Tyson Fury will travel over to the US. I wouldn't imagine so. I don't think that Tyson Fury will train in the US in preparations for AJ. He might do, but he has been training primarily over the past week or so in the UK, and considering Anthony Joshua has begun his training camp, I'm guessing that Tyson Fury is as well. I mean, as we speak, Sugar Hill might be getting on a flight to travel to the UK. I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens when it comes down to that. Nonetheless, there is a picture of Tyson Fury out there alongside Andy Lee and Joseph Parker. He's in the ring, I think giving Joseph Parker some pointers. So he is training, he has a trainer there, and he has a fighter to train alongside as well. Maybe get some quality sparring in also with Joe Parker, who has shared the ring with Anthony Joshua. So, I mean, the interesting thing about that is Derek Chisora has shared the ring with Tyson Fury, so Tyson Fury can help him with that. And Joseph Parker has shared the ring with Anthony Joshua, and he can help Tyson Fury with that, so they can kind of bounce off of one another during training. So that setup is quite sweet for Tyson Fury. Now, is there anything else we want to talk about? I mean, we spoke about Amir Khan and Kell Brook and Conor Benn actually yesterday as well. I mean, Conor Benn is talking about trying to get in the ring with one of them, if they would want to take the challenge, but we have spoken about that. It is interesting to see Conor Benn looking at those guys. He does have a fight in front of him that he must deal with, and this situation between Amir Khan and Kell Brook, it's always been an interesting one, but after a few days or so, I kind of lose interest in it because I just don't see the fight happening. I haven't done before, and I still wonder now, even though Amir Khan says he wants it, he said that he wanted it before. I mean, Kell Brook I would imagine is the one who wants to fight more, or who has proven that in recent times. But Amir Khan, I mean, he did sign with Matchroom on a 3-fight deal, but then went and fought Terence Crawford in the 3rd fight. That was kind of a deal that Amir Khan would have 2 fights then fight Kell Brook, or at least that was the plan that Eddie Hearn had put into place, but he fought Terence Crawford instead. And I guess you can't really say he's ducking Kell Brook to go and face Terence Crawford, one of the pound-for-pound top 3. So it's not like he was ducking Kell Brook in that instance, he was just taking a bigger opportunity to go abroad, make some good money, and fight for a world championship. But still, that Kell Brook one has always been something that has been left at the wayside. Now it seems like Amir Khan wants it, not because he wants to fight Kell Brook, not because he definitely believes he can beat him, but because it's kind of the only fight he can take. Can he go for a world championship? Probably not. He's been beaten by Terence Crawford. He's not beating Errol Spence, and Errol Spence ain't fighting him anyway. He has bigger fish to fry. Ugas is likely going to fight Errol Spence, so it won't be him. I mean, they want to do a unification, both on the same platform, so an easy fight to make, or Ugas has been fighting on PBC anyway, so that could be a fight they can make. So it kind of feels like Amir Khan has run out of opponents that he can face, and unless he wants to go and fight some prospects like say Conor Benn, then the Kell Brook fight is the only one left out there for him, unless of course he wants to move up in weight, which would be extremely dangerous because if he can't beat anyone at welterweight, he's definitely not beating anyone at junior middleweight, and that's not just because those fighters are necessarily better. I mean, Terence Crawford is brilliant, Errol Spence is brilliant. It's because the size difference is considerable between those 2 weight classes, and I just don't see Amir Khan being strong enough to keep anyone of that size away. The speed would slow down over time. He's shown that in the past. He doesn't have the best gas tank anymore, and his feet aren't as fast as his hands, so he does often come over his front foot. He's going to get caught, so moving up is not an option for Amir Khan. Therefore, I think he's done the calculations, and the Kell Brook fight earns him a lot of money. It's a grudge match, it's a big fight as well, and could be his fight where he sails off into the sunset after one more fight, one last hurrah. It seems like it could be Kell Brook. It's more likely now than it ever has been because both fighters are at a crossroads, perhaps retire or take this big fight. That's why it could happen next. Anyway, guys, what are your thoughts on this? Pick your favourite subject and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Also leave a like and grab that subscribe button. Thanks guys.